Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to all my subscribers, to all my fans, to all of you out there who always support me in this channel. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. Now, for those of you who are new to the channel, normally I only post videos on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And on the weekends, I've been doing this new Investing Against the Grain 101, and it's more for novice and more so beginner people in investing. So why are you getting a video from me today on a Tuesday? Well, last night during the Wall Street Journal CEO Summit, Elon Musk had an interview. And so this video is just going to be unpacking what Elon said, some of the comments, some of the answers to the questions he was asked. Now, before we dive into that, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. And for those of you who have been asking for some certain new merch designs, we did listen to you. We heard what you had to say. And so with that said, we made this shirt. This was a request by one of you. It's a quote from Joe Biden regarding Mary Barra. You can read it for yourself. Go check it out. The merch store link is down below in the description. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and get into this.
And where are you right now?
I'm at the Tesla Giga Texas factory that we're about to complete.
I think that's the first time we've actually heard Elon Musk say that they're about to complete Giga Texas, Giga Austin. So that's pretty exciting.
So yeah, what you see behind me is the factory basically. We have the office space and the factory kind of together. I think this is kind of important that we don't have ivory tower management or engineering, and that the management and engineering is as close to the factory as possible. So yeah, so you can see what's going on in the factory and stay grounded.
All right, well, I'm in the ivory tower here in front of a lot of CEOs and a live audience here in Washington, D.C.
That's just a separation from Elon to just about any other CEO or any other techno king, if there is one out there. That you'll see is that, you know, Elon does not see himself above the people. You know, no ivory towers. He wants to have the office in the factory just so that they can remember what's important and just be as close as possible. Management should be as close to the production lines as possible. I love that. This reporter, this interviewer, I don't know how I feel about her. You heard her there talk about how, well, I'm sitting here in the ivory tower with all these CEOs. She makes all these like little attempts to be funny throughout this entire interview. And frankly, I don't know, it somewhat comes off as condescending to me. It also comes off a little, I don't know, trying too hard. But, you know, come up with your own opinions. Let me know what you think in the comments down below.
Everyone is talking about the infrastructure plan and the bill. And I wanted to ask you, say tomorrow you get a phone call from Joe Biden and he says...
I think that's unlikely, but sure.
Okay. You know, he just gives you a call and he says, you know, I haven't been talking a lot about Tesla lately, but, you know, what do you need from this bill? What are your needs? What do you answer him?
To be totally frank, I don't know if at least no one at Tesla has actually brought up whether they care about this bill or not. I think if this bill happened or didn't happen, I don't know. We don't think about it at all, really.
Okay.
So assuming this is true, which there's no reason not to think it is, it's very interesting how nobody at Tesla actually cares about this bill, which it kind of makes sense if you really think about it. They don't need it. They haven't had any subsidies. They haven't had any handouts or anything from the government, you know, in years. And even when they did have the credits or the subsidies, the $7,500, you know, it's not like it was something that Tesla requested for or they needed, right? It was just something the government did, so Tesla benefited from it. So, you know, it's interesting to hear Elon say that he really just doesn't care about it.
It might be better, honestly, it might be better if the bill doesn't pass. Because we've spent so much money, you know, it's like the federal budget deficit is insane. You know, it's like $3 trillion federal expenditures are $7 trillion. Federal revenue is $4 trillion. That's a $3 trillion difference in, if this was a company, it'd be a $3 trillion loss. So I don't know if we should be adding to that loss. That seems pretty crazy. Something's got to give. You can't just spend $3 trillion more than you own every year and expect, you know, don't expect something bad to happen. I think, you know, this is not good.
Well, Mitch McConnell is actually saying...
In fact, if I may elaborate on that, the deficit is more than $3 trillion when you look at the future obligations. So it's $7 trillion of current expenditures, but the it's much more than that if you look at future obligations for Social Security, Medicare, and so forth. So we're running this incredible deficit. Something's got to give. I don't know. This can't keep going.
Well, Mitch McConnell said something similar. That it wasn't too, not as extreme as you, but okay. So let's say his follow-up question is.
So, a lot to say there, but I'll try to keep this short. First of all, what Elon is saying is just, we don't even need this bill. Just dismiss it. We shouldn't have it. And what he's talking about is this deficit we're running. So, for those of you who aren't aware, you have the debt, which is the national debt, and then you have the deficit. The deficit's essentially the amount that we are spending in excess of what we can bring in, right? So essentially, if I have a certain paycheck and I spend more than that paycheck every month, that delta is the deficit. And so we're spending more than we get in our paycheck as a country, as the government. And so what Elon is saying is that our deficit is just insane. At this point, we need to go ahead and just, not even have this bill because it's just adding to the deficit. And it's funny what she says here at the end. Mitch McConnell, he said the same thing, but not as drastic as you. Again, you see how she's trying to be funny, but it's not landing. And the Elon replies, this is just basic math. What is so drastic? What is so severe about what Elon is saying? This is basic math. 1 + 1 = 2. All right. If my bills are $1,000 a month for my household, $1,000 a month, and I only make $500 a month, there's a problem there. Okay, that is a fundamental problem, and nobody ever seems to want to talk about it. The only thing I hear is, oh, well, the Democrats, they did this with the Obamacare, or oh, the Republicans did this and spent money on the military for this. Who cares? Who cares? All right. This isn't a left or right thing. This is a basic math problem. We are spending more than what we take in. And at some point, we're going to have to deal with this. And it's either going to be we go by the way of the Roman Empire or other civilizations, Venezuela, right? Or we address it. But it seems like the only thing we want to do is kick the can down the road and just maintain certain political parties within Congress. And I don't even want to get into this. I hate talking about politics, but this is just a math equation, and we need to let the math dictate what we do, in my opinion.
Okay, Elon, you don't think we need to spend anything on the infrastructure? If he says to you, what is the biggest improvement we can make to the U.S. infrastructure? What do you say?
I think we generally could have better airports, better highways, especially in cities that are congested. We've got to do something to deal with the extreme traffic, which I think is some combination of double-deckering freeways and building tunnels. But if we don't do something, we will be stuck in traffic for forever. As autonomous vehicles come to the fore, and it's easier to drive without going through the pain of having to drive yourself, which is absolutely coming. And will be one of the biggest transformations ever in human civilization.
I love what Elon said here as far as if he had to tell the president something, right? Something to recommend for infrastructure. He talks about airports, which, by the way, my friend Caitlin, she recently visited me. She was in town, so we had a visit. And she was talking about the New Orleans airport, and I was looking at some new images of it. Wow, beautiful. New Orleans airport is not what it used to be. Absolutely ridiculous in a positive way, obviously. But I agree with airports. This definitely needs to be done. Traffic, whether you're in D.C., whether you're in L.A., whether you're in Houston, New York City, Boston, traffic is ridiculous. And I love that Elon isn't just talking about tunnels. He's talking about double deckers. You see a lot of that actually in New York. You're starting to see more and more of these double decker highways. But I do think that's the way to go. And I love what he said about autonomous vehicles. He's saying it is coming and it will be the most transformational thing in humankind or human history. I forget exactly what he said, but that's a very, very impactful statement. I get it. He's in the space. He's biased, but he's also the closest one to the technology. He's on the latest iteration of the technology. He sees what's coming, right? He's very close to it. So, if he's saying this, it's something worth listening to. And, if history shows anything, Elon's been right pretty much about all of his bets.
There will be more cars on the road, and the traffic will get much worse. And so we really need to do some combination of tunnels or like I said, double-deckering freeways. I'm not a big believer in flying cars. They're basically helicopters with wheels, and people don't want the skies to be swarming with helicopters.
Just a couple things to talk about here. 2 points. One, I agree with them. The whole idea of flying cars and a sky filled with, helicopter-like cars or, VTOLs, whatever you want to call them. I'm not about it personally. I don't want, it's bad enough when we have noise pollution. It's bad enough when we have light pollution. I don't want to have a sight pollution as well, right? I mean, how many senses am I going to have to go through that I'm just going to get polluted before it's just ridiculous to even be outside? We're just going to end up being hermits inside if that's the case. Putting things underground makes the most sense, in my opinion. I also thought it was very interesting how he said with autonomous vehicles that we're going to have a lot more vehicles on the road. Now, this is something I've thought, and on some of my models that I don't share just because they're more so optimistic and aspirational models. If you see any of my models, I don't talk about robotaxis or anything of that nature, but I do have those, right? They do exist. I just don't share those because, again, I like to be more conservative with what I show you all. But with that said, in my models, I have predicted that we're going to have even more vehicles than what we have today, right? Autonomous vehicles, I do believe, will increase the amount of vehicles out there, not decrease. So that's the first time I've heard Elon say that. So I'm very happy to hear that it reiterates what I have going on in my models.
You said at this conference actually a year ago that you think government should really just be hands off when it comes to innovation. Though with this bill, there is a lot of support for EVs, and it could be the biggest change that we've seen throughout the country in terms of the infrastructure of EVs, and it helps Tesla. What do you think the role of government should be?
I think the role of government should be that of like a referee, but not a player on the field. Generally, government should, I think, just try to get out of the way and not impede progress. I think there's a general problem, not just in the US, but most countries, where the rules and regulations keep increasing every year. Rules and regulations are immortal. They don't die. There's not a natural. Occasionally you see some law with a sunset provision, but really otherwise, the vast majority of rules and regulations live forever. And so if more rules and regulations are applied every year, and it just keeps growing and growing, eventually it takes longer and longer, and it's harder to do things. And there's not really an effective garbage collection system for removing rules and regulations. This hardens the arteries of civilization, where you're able to do less and less over time.
Wow, that was heavy. This hardens the arteries of civilization. That is heavy. All right, just think of that imagery of that. I want to give another analogy. What he's talking about, the more rules and regulations we go on, that they never get sunsetted, that we just add, we don't ever subtract or delete or remove some. It's no different than a hoarder. Okay, imagine you're in your house and you have a front door and a back door. To get to the front door to the back door takes you 2 seconds, right? You walk right through. But now imagine if you were never allowed to throw away anything you ever brought into your house. Everything you brought into your house, you had to keep. Over time, everything's going to build up and up and up, and it's just going to be harder and harder for you to get from that front door to that back door. In other words, the arteries of civilization will become congested. Same concept, right? We need to have a proper way of removing regulations that don't make sense over time, or combining them just to make them more efficient and streamlined, right? There's got to be to his point, a trash can way of removing some of these regulations. It can't just be that we always stackpile these over and over. Look at what's happening with Giga Berlin, okay? This is exactly what's happening in Germany. Germany's laden by their regulations and their rules.
Right now, you're sitting in a Tesla factory. How are you spending your time these days between the split between SpaceX and Tesla?
It's about even between SpaceX and Tesla. It depends on what is the kind of crisis of the moment. Some weeks will be more Tesla, more SpaceX. But I work a lot. I work 7 days a week and put in some pretty crazy hours. So, but it really depends on where I'm needed most. I triage the tasks and try to do the things that are most useful or where I'm most needed. And it varies from 1 week to the next.
I thought it was very interesting, him saying that he splits his time 50-50. The whole idea of, he goes to wherever he is needed for triage reasons. That makes sense. I think we all knew that. But the idea that he's 50-50, I think a lot of people had been thinking that more and more Elon's spending more time at SpaceX. And, again, it's interesting, good confirmation to hear that he is 50-50, that he does not have a divided attention or more focused towards one versus the other. As an investor, that matters, and it's good to hear.
But, just going back to that infrastructure bill for a second, because sometimes the criticism of Tesla is like, hey, Tesla.
Did you see that eyebrow movement? Watch this again.
Sometimes the criticism of Tesla is like, hey, Tesla gets all these subsidies. But it's worth noting that for the vehicle purchase tax credit, the $7,500, Tesla stopped getting that like 2 years ago. So whereas everyone else, I think, except for GM, still gets the $7,500 tax credit. All of our sales this year and I think last year had nothing to do with the tax credit, because we were no longer eligible because we'd made so many electric cars. Tesla's made roughly 2/3 of all the electric cars in the United States. I'm not sure most people are aware of that. Yeah, so Tesla's made basically twice as many electric vehicles as the rest of industry combined. We don't need the $7,500 tax credit. I would say, honestly, I would just can this whole bill. Don't pass it. That's my recommendation.
So again, I agree with Elon. I've been saying this for a while now. I'd prefer there be no EV tax credit, and he's taken a step further, saying just can the bill. To Elon's point, Tesla's made 2/3 of all the electric vehicles in the United States. That's wild. That's insane. And this $7,500 credit that is already in existence, right? It's not part of this new bill. It already exists. This applies to all auto manufacturers, anyone. I think up to 200,000 vehicles, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, just let me know below in the comments. But the point is, if it's 200,000 vehicles, every single manufacturer out there gets it. Tesla has already used all of theirs. So in essence, if any other manufacturers coming up now and are trying to get into the electric vehicle business, well, they technically have an advantage over Tesla. So good for them, right? They still have that credit. They still have their 200,000 vehicles, and then it'll go away. Why do we need any more after that? That's all Tesla needed. That's all GM seemed to have needed. So why do we have to extend this? Why do we have to add any more? Right? At this point, we should just get rid of all subsidies, oil and gas as well. We don't need subsidies. To his point, the deficit is real. Our debt obligations are real. We need to take that serious.
What about the support, though, for the charging network? I mean, there are parts of this bill and no?
No. I mean, do we need support for gas stations? We don't. So there's no need for this for support for a charging network. I would delete it. Delete.
Okay, all right.
I'm literally saying get rid of all subsidies, but also for oil and gas.
He is simply savage.
If you think about also how this affects your competitors, does that impact how some of your view on this?
I mean, maybe they need it. I don't know, but I think just generally, I'm in favor of deleting subsidies. I mean, when we started Tesla, there were no EV subsidies at all, and gasoline was super cheap. We did not anticipate any subsidies. That came later, and that came the $7,500 tax credit came as a result not of Tesla activity, but of General Motors lobbying for it. I would just say just delete them all.
So that was new for me. I did not know that. I didn't know that the $7,500 credit that currently exists, not part of the Build Back Better Biden plan, the existing $7,500 credit, I didn't realize that was come about because of GM initiating it or lobbying for it. And again, I didn't know Tesla had no part of that. So that's interesting. But her point, well, will this affect your competitors? Well, sure, I guess in a way, but the competitors are going to have the exact same advantage that Tesla had. In other words, they'd have this credit, this existing $7,500 credit for the first 200,000 vehicles that they produce. And so Tesla doesn't get that anymore. GM doesn't get that anymore. So Ford, Stellantis, Honda, Toyota, everybody else gets the benefit from that. So this is a fair level playing field. And frankly, that's more than enough, in my opinion, to be given to these corporations. I don't think they need any more. Like, if you do not create an incentive for people to become better and more efficient and reduce costs, and you just hand them out a grant, a stipend, well, guess what? That desire, that need for profitability won't exist because they're getting a handout. So I am so against any of these extra credits.
All right, but there's some other good things in this bill that some would argue. I mean, a lot of money earmarked for R&D. Would you want to put that towards something?
No.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on from the bill because I think we get what you're
seriously, we
saying
shouldn't pass
on it.
In general, we should just, if we don't cut government spending, something really bad's going to happen. This is crazy. Our spending is so far in excess of revenue, it's insane. Like, you could zero out all billionaires in the country. This is all this like anti-billionaire BS. If you zeroed out all the billionaires, you still wouldn't solve the deficit.
Think about that. If you zeroed out all the billionaires in the country, you still wouldn't zero out the deficit. The deficit, I'm not talking about the debt. We're talking about the deficit. That is crazy. I hope Bernie Sanders is listening.
All right, I'll ask you another question around the billionaire BS. Say tomorrow we've talked, you get the phone call from President Biden. Next day, actually, we decide we elect you to Congress. Somehow this happens. You're now working on tax bills. You're working on tax policy. How do you tax someone like you? How do you tax billionaires?
I mean, first of all, I pay a lot of tax. I mean, my marginal tax rate is like 53%. That's not trivial. And, and then obviously there's like asset-based taxes, the sales tax and everything else. There's also the estate tax. I think the estate tax is a good tax. Like, if you think of assets beyond a certain level that are far beyond, let's say, somebody's ability to consume, at a certain point, really what you're doing is capital allocation. So it's not money for personal expenditures. What you're doing is capital allocation. And it does not make sense to take the job of capital allocation away from people who have demonstrated great skill in capital allocation and give it to an entity that has demonstrated very poor skill in capital allocation, which is the government.
So I have a couple thoughts on this. One, on that last part, I fundamentally agree, right? Why would you ever want to take cash money out of Elon Musk's hand? He is by far one of the most efficient people in the world with capital allocation. What we've seen him alone do with rockets, with SpaceX, for our government, right? For the world. The way he's been able to drop the costs just precipitously year over year, it seems. And what's going to happen now with at Starbase? I mean, it's just, everything's crazy what he's doing. He's by far the most efficient, even with electric vehicles. I mean, capital in Elon's hand is going to be way more efficient than in the government's hand. Now, as far as like taxing billionaires and things of that nature, again, I have no finance background. I'm not an analyst. None of this financial advice ever, okay? Ever on this channel. But with that said, what I've always wondered is, why don't we just have a flat tax or a consumption tax? And I'm sure there's things out there explaining why this would never work and why it'd be so disastrous. But my feeble mind thinks it would be a good idea. Hear me out. A consumption tax. In other words, if you buy something, you get a tax on it. All right, your income's not taxed at all. What this would do, in my opinion, is all these billionaires and people who have crazy amounts of money, if they buy a Lamborghini, if they use a jet to go from point A to point B, if they buy a certain villa, a new house, whatever, that's going to get taxed, right? The more you spend, the more you pay in taxes. However, we could have a limit for a certain poverty level. So let's say if you make under a teacher's salary, or a teacher's salary is the bare minimum, right? So a little bit above, poverty level, just call it $50,000. So anyone under $50,000, you don't pay any taxes. I don't know. I think that would be a good idea. And that way, the people who do spend a lot of money, who have all the money, are paying more in taxes. I think that's a pretty fair, equitable way of doing this. I mean, it seems like it'd be pretty fair distribution. People who have money pay more taxes. It's more direct. And on top of that, we are arguably the biggest destination in the world for people who are traveling. So anybody who travels to our country and spends money in our country are contributing to our taxes. Anyway, I'm sure there's a obvious flaw with what I'm saying, but my little mind, that's how I think. And that's just an idea I thought would always be cool. And I've only seen one person ever run on that, and they didn't win the election. So anyways, let's continue.
Sure. I mean, I can talk for a bit longer if you'd like than the half an hour, if you're worried about getting through other questions. I
hear we have nobody else joining us at this conference.
Again, maybe I'm being sensitive here, but to me, this is her again trying to make a joke and trying to land it, saying, oh, I hear we have nobody else in this conference, as if, no, Elon, I have someone else to interview, or there's more people to interview, not just you. Listen, take a step back. Nobody's going to watch any other CEO that you have on here. There's a reason why everybody's tuning in for Elon Musk. That's one. Two, the greatest entrepreneur, the greatest inventor of our time is who you're interviewing right now. Do you honestly think anybody else on your panel matters? And then 3, if this is a CEO summit, you've got a individual who's the CEO of 2 companies, name someone else who's doing that, has turned essentially 2 companies into billion-dollar companies, and one of them is a trillion-dollar company. And on top of that, he happens to be the wealthiest person in the world by a mile. And you're going to sit there and act like, oh, we have other people to interview. Listen, CNBC this morning spent half an hour, the first 30 minutes from 6 to 6:30 was all about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, they get clicks, they get views. So stop with these jokes. Just don't land for me. I don't even think it's funny. I think if anything, she's just insulting the person who she's interviewing, who just said, if you need more time, I can stay a little bit longer to answer your questions. Like, he's being generous, and his time is clearly more valuable than hers, than mine, than yours. Elon's doing actual things in the world that change, the world as we know it. So I don't know. Again, maybe I'm ranting here. Maybe I'm just getting a little too passionate, but
I'm going to shift away from government, come back to your world. Just thinking about sort of how you juggle Tesla and SpaceX, and you've said along the way that the workload at Tesla is quite a lot. Have you? And I know now you could regain the chairman position. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about your sort of your title and your position there right now?
I mean, it's interesting that these titles. You know that there's actually only 3 titles that actually mean anything for a corporation. It's president, secretary, and treasurer, and technically they could be the same person. And all these other titles are just basically made up. So CEO is a made-up title, CFO is a made-up title, general counsel, made-up title, don't mean anything.
That's a nice. I think a room of CEOs are how we feel about that. Yep.
Again, another joke I just don't think lands by her. But what I've learned a long time ago, anybody who ever cares about their title, whether you're a manager, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a director, whether you're a VP, the people who care about those titles tend to be the worst. The people you do not want to work for, the people you do not want to be under. And trust me, I've worked for these people, and I've left companies because of these people. The people who honestly care about these things are the ones that you need to have red flags for immediately. And I love how Elon's just dismissing it. Like, who cares about these titles? They're not even real. It's a marketing experiment. I mean, I find that pretty comical.
It was like, obviously just somebody's marketing experiment.
So I guess I'll be more direct. I mean, are you considering stepping down as CEO? Would you transfer, be chairman, and think about being chief product officer? I mean, since CEO title doesn't matter anyway.
I changed my title to Techno King, and by the way, this is a formal SEC filing. I'm legally a formal whatever Techno King. I just did that as kind of like a joke because just to show that these titles don't mean a lot. You can see what is actually legally necessary if you fill out the form for creating a C corp, and then you see it's president, treasurer, and secretary. You need a director too, but that's basically it. And then all these other chief whatever officer are basically just made up.
In other words, shut up. I don't care about these titles. I'm not going to answer your question. I'm not going to tell you if I'm going to step down as Techno King of Tesla. Like that's all he's saying. He beautifully just dismissed the question.
But speaking of the Tesla bot, I know you've talked about the importance of creating this bot for the future of AI. Tell me a little bit about where you're at with this project and what we can expect in the next coming months.
With the Tesla Autopilot or Full Self-Driving, we're effectively, I think, creating the most advanced practical AI for navigating the real world. You can almost think of Tesla as like the world's biggest robot company, or semi-sentient robot company. So we have, the car is kind of a robot on 4 wheels, and so then, we could probably take that same technology and put it in a humanoid robot and have that robot be useful. So essentially to have the humanoid part, we need to develop some custom actuators and sensors, essentially use the Tesla Full Self-Driving or Autopilot, or just generally speaking, real world navigation AI in the humanoid robot. And I think this could be quite profound. I don't know exactly when we will get this right, but we will get it right. This
is the first time we've actually heard Elon, at least from what I'm aware of, talk about Optimus, the Tesla bot, the humanoid, since it was actually unveiled. No real revelation here other than his, his commitment and his fortitude and his determination that, I don't know how long it'll take. I don't have a timeline, but we will get it done.
It is, and yet so many people, including smart people, think that there are too many people in the world and think that the population is growing out of control. It's completely the opposite. Please look at the numbers. If people don't have more children, civilization is going to crumble. Mark my words.
Is this why you have so many children?
I'm trying to set a good example. Yeah. Gotta practice what I preach.
I won't ask you to predict how many more children you're going to have tonight, but...
All right, so I think her joke was funny there. I don't think it was executed well, but it was a funny line that she said. I'll give her that one. But I love Elon. I want to, practice what I preach. Like, that's pretty hilarious. I want to do my part. That's, I got that. When I heard that last night, I literally started bawling my eyes out. It was hilarious.
I'm not as good at Twitter as you are, but people on Twitter are asking me what's going to happen on 12/9. Can you tell me what's going to happen on 12/9?
Nothing, as far as I know. I don't know where this came from. I think this is just one of those memes that, I don't know, it came out of nowhere. But as far as I know, nothing. But maybe something will happen that I'm not aware of.
This almost makes me really not like her. Like, I already kind of didn't like her to begin with, and then when I heard this, I really didn't like her. Why do you have to bring up 12/9? Why do you have to bring it up to the CEO? Listen, most of us, we knew this was nothing. All right, but it was fun, and clearly Elon was trolling us and giving us these hints and these ways for us to figure out 12/9. It was fun, and instead, a few days before December 9th, she has to go ahead and ruin it for us, right? Like, why couldn't you just let us get to it and just be excited to be excited, right? Just something to look forward to. She literally just took away this Christmas or Hanukkah or just holiday miracle out of the air. It's bad form, but it looks like nothing's happening. Well, at least not that Elon's aware of. So you never know. There might still be some hope out there. Who knows what happens on the 9th of December? Let's not give up just yet.
And Cybertruck.
Cybertruck. Cybertruck's going to be an incredible product. I think it may be our best product ever. And I think it probably will be. It has a lot of new technology, so it's a hard car to make. But it will be awesome. And I think I've said before that we're aiming for volume production in 2023. And I will provide a more detailed product update at the Tesla earnings call early next year. I wish it could be sooner, but that's most likely when it happens. It'll be something really special, like just one of those kind of rare products that happens once in a while. That's really special.
Let me correct Elon. What he meant to say is once in a lifetime products. Okay, this is why we reserved ours. This is why we've been waiting before we get any other Tesla. We're waiting for the Cybertruck. This is extremely exciting. I cannot wait for this thing to arrive. 2023 can't come fast enough. This product's going to be amazing. It's going to be unparalleled. Now, the only thing is I'm waiting for them to allow us to re-up so we can go ahead and get the 4 motor. And what I'm curious about is with the 4 motor, are we going to have bigger batteries, right? And if we have more not bigger batteries, but more volume of batteries, right? More energy density. And if that's the case, with more kilowatt hours, can we go even further than 500 miles? Maybe Elon's thinking, you know what? Let's scrap the single motor or the tri-motor. We'll just do dual and quad, and then we'll put in a even bigger battery pack. And all these people who are trying to claim like they have all this amazing range, watch what we're about to do to them with the 4680. I'm hoping that's what happens. I would love to be able to sit there in my Cybertruck, be able to go, from essentially here where I live in Florida up to my in-laws up in Boston in, 1, maybe 2 charges. That would be absolutely insane. While, of course, we kick back, relax, watch our Netflix because FSD is taking us all the way there. That's the dream. That's the goal. I cannot wait.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about humor. You're a pretty funny guy. You show it on Twitter a lot. You've hosted SNL. And I'm wondering how that plays into your management style. I mean, would your coworkers say you're funny? Is this something you're sort of bringing to the office now? Is it helped with managing your teams?
I mean, I think I'm funny. I find my jokes funny. I don't know. I guess yeah, I do. I mean, I do crack a lot of jokes. They don't all land, but I, I am aspirationally, aspirationally funny. Yeah, I mean, we try to have a good sense of humor at the office too.
He's the funniest CEO, I mean, techno king that we're aware of. That's for sure.
I also wanted to ask that lately on Twitter, and you've been poking fun at people for their age quite a bit. And I wanted to have a sense of, do you not plan to age? And what is your, how are you combating aging? Is there some secret technology we don't know about that you've got?
I'm not aware of any secret technology to combat aging. I mean, I don't know that we should really try to live for a super long time. I think it is important for us to die, because most of the times people don't change their mind, they just die. And so if we live forever, then we might become a very ossified society where new ideas cannot succeed. But I'm not poking fun at aging. I'm just saying, if we've got people in very important positions that have to make decisions that are critical to the security of the country, then they need to have sufficient presence of mind and cognitive ability to make those decisions well. Because the whole country's depending on them.
Well, I thought you might say psychedelics were your way of not aging, but I would like to just go if anyone's got one or two questions for this guy.
I don't think dropping acid makes you age less. So I think drugs probably make you age more, not less.
So that's one hell of a way to end it, right? Talking about dropping acid is probably not the best thing for aging. Look, I very much agree with what Elon's saying, and I've taken a few jabs, just talking about the older population in general, and I should be more nuanced the way Elon was just there. My intention is not to talk about a certain age. My intention is to talk about a certain way of thinking, and I fundamentally really have an issue with people who get stuck in a certain era of thinking and don't evolve and don't keep up with pace. The people who I talk about, the Joe Bidens and the Bernie Sanders, even the Donald Trumps of the world, okay, they all are just stuck in a whole different world. Meanwhile, the supporters I have for this channel, I mean, a good majority of you are older than what I am, yet all of you are up to date on technology, on electrification, on batteries, on chemistries, right? That's what we need. We need more of that, not just this old way of thinking, the way things have always been, and people who have just been in bureaucracy forever. All right, that's what I have an issue with. And that can be whether someone's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, all up to 100, doesn't matter. I have an issue with that. People who aren't staying with technology, people who aren't willing to learn and keep an open mind and see a different perspective. That is what I will never be a part of or stand for. With that said, we're going to wrap it up here. This video's been long enough. I appreciate if you stuck to the end. Before we leave, though, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Ring that bell. I love you all. I appreciate all of you. Everyone who watches, whether you have subscribed or not, seriously, I appreciate your time. I understand it's valuable, and thank you for sharing it with me today. All right. Love you all. Peace.